Welcome to Chapter 2. This one's titled, The Link is What You Think. Now, I do have to admit, this is probably one of my favorite chapters in the whole book, because as you're going to learn as you start to read this chapter, there's this thing that I love, and it's called thinking about thinking. So thoughts to me are really fascinating. They hopefully by the end of this chapter will be fascinating to you too, but we're going to do a deep dive into thoughts. What I found was most people don't even realize they're thinking, and if they do realize they're thinking, they don't even know what to do with it once they find out all these thoughts that they're having. So we're going to get you a really deep dive, a tutorial into understanding what thoughts are, how to work with your thoughts, and how to understand the thinking process. All human beings are going through it. Now, I do want to give you a warning in Chapter 2. There's a lot of information in here. And as you heard in the other videos, this is not something that you're going to want to read like sitting by the pool, having a few refreshments with some friends. This is a deep dive into understanding how your mind works. So you're going to think about this like you'd be thinking about taking an actual course. So we're going to go over a little bit about what's in Chapter 2. You've got the 4 components of being human are in this chapter. You've got the 5 basic human needs, along with the 5 crippling habits, the top 10 cognitive distortions, the 3 steps to getting unstuck, and then you've got the ladder of inference. A lot of great information in here, and I don't claim to own any of these. Everything that you're going to learn in this book and all the bullet points I just mentioned actually come from different places, different wisdom teachers, different sciences, different research, and just all the things that are out there in the world. What I was solving for by creating this book and this course for you is I don't know that you're going to want to go spend, I don't know how many years and read over 500, I think I'm up to 600 books now, and go into a dozen different certifications and multiple degrees to try to figure this out. So what I'm gifting you with in this course is kind of the Cliff Note style. So you don't need to go do a dissertation on learning all of this. You're just getting the synthesized information in this chapter. So let's go through this just a little bit so that you're clear. I've mentioned the different components and the different kind of bullet points. Chunking is something I use a lot to teach. Chunking is really helpful because it gives your mind a place to focus. And the chunking that I give you in each chapter, especially in Chapter 2, you want to follow that in order. So let's talk about the 4 components of being human. As I mentioned before, you have more research to dive into and in-depth teaching on each one of these bullet points in Chapter 2 on my podcast and on the video of the podcast that's below on the link below this video. So don't forget about that. I'm not here to dive in and teach you. I'm here to remind you and help you go with the flow through this chapter of what to do. So the 4 components of being human, you're going to read a little bit about that. You can listen and learn more like I just mentioned. And then you're actually going to stop and you're going to do a shut up and sit exercise where you're going to answer the questions to help you figure out what are your 4 components of being human. You don't want to go forward and then come back and do this. You want to go right out of the gate understanding what are the components that make me wildly unique. You're going to learn everybody's going through the same process of having the 4 components, but yours are specific and unique to you. So you want to fill this worksheet out and you want to get those answers so that you understand who you are. When you have clarity of understanding who you are and how you show up in the world, it makes life so much easier to build on. And that's the way this book is written. Each section builds on the section before it. So take some time, sit down with reflection, pen and paper. You can write it in the book, and you can also do a little bit more journaling if you have your own journal that you'd like to add to that. So definitely want you to take some time to pace yourself through this. When you get to the 5 basic human needs and the 5 crippling habits, there's more content out there to go a little bit deeper into that. But it's really important to understand we've got little spaces along the way on the 5 crippling habits for you to start to connect with not just gaining information and taking in this content, but remember, I've been saying this all along in the videos, I want you to stop and reflect and say, what is it about this content that actually is something that I need or would like to learn or sit with a little bit longer? So it's fine to say, thanks for telling me what the 5 crippling habits are, but we've got space in the book for you to stop and answer the question, which one of these habits did you develop because one of your 5 basic human needs was not met? So the story as we go through is going to be built on the previous exercise. So in this chapter, you really are getting an MBA, an inner MBA in mastering your behavior and your aspirations. And also we could even say your awareness is going to start to cultivate and grow as you go through this work. So be really careful in chapter 2. Take it easy. A lot of my clients actually do one bullet section at a time. Sometimes that's a nice way to go through it. So if you read and then you get to the 4 components of being human, you might want to do that exercise and actually just kind of set it down. If I took you to a restaurant and I said, hey, you're going to have a, how many bullet points do we have? 1, 2, 3, 4, a 6-course meal. You would expect to take a little bit of time to eat those 6 courses. You wouldn't do it all in a matter of a few minutes. So this is something that you're taking a little bit at a time. You can put it down, you can come back to it, you can breathe, whatever you need to do. Just make sure you're pacing yourself through chapter 2 because there's a lot of content here. And I want to make sure that you get the best of all of it. So as you continue to work through, you'll see the rest of this work. And then as we start to get to the end of chapter 2, you'll start to see again, I wove in and dropped you a little poem that's in there. There's one in this chapter by Hafez. He's one of my favorite poet. And again, that's inserted to help to give you a little bit of pull the brake for a second, slow down, get that right brain involved in this process. This is not all left brain learning. This course is integrated and it's built to get you to start to pull left and right brain together, body and mind together. We're pulling the wounds and the wisdom, the past, the present. We're putting all of that together as we go on this journey together. So go through this and be kind to yourself. But when you get the moments like the poems, make sure you take a chance to really slow down. And then at the end of the chapter, I've got an extra little surprise for you. There's a really cool worksheet here. And there's actually, it's a worksheet that helps you really kind of dissect and walk through your negative thoughts. So if you find yourself waking up in this chapter and going, whoa, holy shit, yet I didn't realize there's so much about thoughts to think about, to learn, to go through, I've given you a little bit of an exercise in the end. So when you find yourself kind of in that, what I call a downward spiral of negative thinking, there's a really great section in the book, and it's titled a Shut Up and Sit exercise. And so what you're going to do is you're going to use this. Maybe this is the first time. Maybe you come back and use this process as one of your habits when you do get into some negative thinking. But there's some really great questions here to ask you about the evidence for the thought, to help walk you through different ways to work with shifting the thought. And as you go through this, use this, but know you can come back and use these questions over and over again when negative thoughts start to come up in between our sessions, in between the videos, and in between the chapters. So another cool thing that's in this book that I absolutely love is in different chapters, you're also going to see something called Voices of Mindfulness. So in chapter 2, we have the Voices of Mindfulness, which is a testimonial from a client of mine who did this work, just like you, who decided to shut up and sit, to go within and use this process to figure out who they were and how to bring their best self out into the world and create their love-based vision. So I'm excited to say that in this chapter, we have Chase. Chase Tuning is in This Is Your Voice of Mindfulness. I have an amazing episode on a podcast with him. He shares all about his journey, all about his vision. He's literally today living his love-based vision in LA as a global influencer. And when we first started working together, he was a health coach at a local medical practice here in the city that I live in. And he has just flourished tremendously. So I definitely would encourage you to read the Voices of Mindfulness. But again, we want to make sure that you know that there is a podcast episode, an interview with Chase, so that you can hear a little bit more about how this work has impacted him. And why is that important? Because I want you to hear from other people. This work is, you're going to find it's not about doing what I did to get what I got. I'm teaching you the tools. Again, remember, this is a course for you to learn a process and to learn tools to go in your own mind and to figure out who you are and what you think about. And if you don't like what you're thinking about, you have the ability to learn how to change it. It's that simple. And so as we get to the end of this chapter, we have something really cool called the ladder of inference. Now, I love visuals, and it's literally a ladder. So you're going to see in here how, once you get through these other components in the chapter, how we climb the ladder of inference and make meaning. What data we see, what data we pick out in our environment, what stories we write with that data. And so this is a really cool tool that I definitely want you to learn. But you know what? Again, this book is something that I keep saying you keep coming back to. So this ladder of inference that you're going to keep climbing over and over, everybody's climbing their own ladder of inference. Nobody has the thought process that you do. And if we could just learn that, imagine how we would change the suffering of the world. The majority of our suffering is because we want other people to think like we think. And the truth is, nobody thinks like you think. Now, collectively, we might hold similar thought patterns and processes, which are, that's all a culture is a pattern, a collective pattern of beliefs. And what you're going to learn in this chapter is a belief is just a thought you keep thinking. So we're diving deep and we're going hard and fast into the thinking process. So you can start to ask yourself, do I like what I'm thinking? Is it serving me? Is it bringing my best self out? And you're also going to learn you can't control what other people think. You can only control what you think. So this is what's going to happen in this chapter for you. I'm really excited about it. And as always, I'm kind of flipping through, looking at where we end this chapter. There's some really cool worksheets to, again, keep coming back to on the thinking process. There is a really great TED Talk here that I want to make sure that as we get ready to wrap up that you don't lose sight of, that's actually titled Getting Stuck in the Negatives, which is really great information about how important it is to frame positive thoughts before we frame negative ones. And as always, I give you some opportunities for further reading. Do you have to do them right now on the first pass at this? Absolutely not. They're there for you to learn that if you want to read more, you want to go a little bit deeper on your own, you've got some additional resources, but you don't have to do the further reading as you go through, especially on the first pass. If this is your first time taking in this information, we want to make sure you don't overwhelm yourself. And I already feel like you might be drinking from a fire hose a little bit because this is a lot of brand new information for most people. We're not raised with this information. And then there's a really great poem in here by, what a cool name, Araya Mountain Dreamer. I wonder if she was actually born with that name. Probably not. But anyway, there's a really cool poem, again, bringing that right brain back in. You'll start to see that dance I take you on, right and left brain, thoughts and feelings, and you're going to go on a journey with me here. But in chapter 2, we're really just kind of teeing up that thinking process. And I wanted you to understand the chapter, know what was in there, and again, know where the resources are if you want to go deeper. So that wraps up chapter 2. The link is what we think. We're going to be moving forward into our next chapter, which is all about emotions. So I'll see you over in chapter 3.